Okay, so we're back here with Omai with Elaine, and it's not every time you sort of take an 8 month break speaking with someone and they're back with a 4 to 5x re-rate and cost of capital, but that has happened. 12 cents when we spoke last, now at I guess 60 to 70 cents, so fairly spectacular.
Yeah.
Just in terms of recap, before we look at the drilling that has been done in the interim here, you had a big financing in February, like the first big one for a long time, which marked a sort of step change. 25 million CAD raised. Who participated in that financing? Could you just clarify that first?
Yeah, actually, it was mostly funds. So I think Van Eck, that was new. They were the lead order. Franklin Templeton came in again, Schroders and Rothschilds out of Paris. So it was really the who's who of the international precious metals funds, which is fantastic. We got a great, we're probably about 50% institutional holdings now.
Yeah. So the raise itself was like 80% plus institutional. So some
Yes.
big orders, more or less.
Yeah. And the great part about that, there was no warrant as well.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
So,
so it's excellent. So the financial position as of now, I mean, you drilled some, even drilled like with 5 rigs since then. So your financial position is pretty much the same as the amount you raised, I would presume. Or could you just indicate where you're at currently?
yeah, yeah, and so we have about we just have 29 million Canadian, which is I guess on your conversion rate, what's that, about 25, 24 million US. So it's ample for what we're doing, and I think we talked about this before. Operating in Guyana, the drilling and everything else, the in-country costs, and we work pretty, we're pretty cost effective. So
Yep.
so our costs are about $200 US a meter, all in drilling, assaying, everything. So in other words, even with the three rigs that we have going now, our burn on the project in country is about 1.25 million a month.
Yep.
So we're obviously well positioned for that. But we'll talk a little bit about some of the other things we're doing. So some other costs, because basically we want to advance this project as quickly as possible.
Yeah, we'll get there. So 1.25, that's drilling and sort of G&A. So by the end of this year, roughly, where would you expect the cash to sit at end of 25? As a
I think we'll still be at around probably 16 million, 15, 16 million.
and that's
That's
Canadian,
US. That'd
US
be
still.
US.
Okay,
Yeah.
right. So
Yeah.
that's very nice.
Yeah. Yeah. But, when you've got a project that's sort of, you can kind of see a clear path towards a producer. I think we've gone over that inflection to, is this just a big deposit or is it economic and is it going to be a mine? I think we're well over that line now that this is going to
Yeah,
be a mine. So, that means go as fast as you can.
yeah, and with the context of Guyana as we covered, you sort of have to as well, with the history of the mine and all of these things. But
Yeah.
your market cap now is almost, I mean, it's like 350 million CAD. So I
Right.
mean, you next time you raise, maybe you do a 10% dilution event and you get all the cash you likely need before you get acquired. It's just my gut feeling, but we'll see. We'll sort of dig into that.
Right.
In terms of the team, what you've made some new hires. I've spoken to David, obviously, your new corp dev. Who else? I mean, what does the team look like on the ground? Because last time you were in the process of sort of upscaling.
Yeah. We've expanded the team on site. Obviously, when you bring in new drills, you have to do that, and we've been fairly lucky. Well, lucky, I guess it's the way we plan things. But we've hired a lot of people that have worked in country before. Obviously, it's difficult to get senior level geologists in Guyana. We have some really good, up and coming local geologists, Guyanese geologists that are doing a great job. And some of them have been with us for like 3-4 years. But the new senior people, they've all worked in country before, some at the Aurora mine, some for G2, some for the big Toro Paru project. So they know the geology, and that's all, and they know the culture, and they're great guys, and they're already locked and loaded. So they've been a delight. So I would say we've never been so happy as the team we have now. So
Excellent. But
yeah,
I mean, without further ado, let's just get into the drilling
sure.
that has taken place. I mean, people have seen the headlines, so we'll let you pull up the slides and we'll sort of step through it.
So
Yeah.
I mean, just as a refresher, obviously we have the two deposits. We're in Guyana, which is in South America, not West Africa. It's Guyana. So yeah, so I've just shown you the two deposits there. The project's a little bit unique in the sense that there's two significant gold deposits only 400 meters apart. So I just kind of put the highlights there. So, it had the past production of 3.8 million ounces, and we've already identified about 4.3. So just recapping, like last year was a busy year. We put out our resource in February. As you know, we did that baseline PEA in April. Then since then, we've actually, obviously, we've been much better financed. So we've drilled 30,000 meters, mostly on Wenot, since that resource last year. And the focus for us is really expanding Wenot and testing, the theme being like, how big is this thing? It's 2.5 kilometers strike length. At the widest part, the shear is almost 500 meters wide with about 4 or 5 major zones. So it's been, we feel that the best way to create value for the shareholders has been to really explore the size of Wenot. So the baseline PEA, I think we talked about that. We did that because that got us on the road to permitting. It also helped investors understand that there is a path towards production, but it's very much in our rearview mirror. So we also did a hole on Gilt Creek, which was the first one we've done. And that was pretty exciting. And I can run you through those results because those results are subsequent to since we've talked. It was a unique hole in the sense that we hit 774 meters of mineralized intrusion, and that's definitely a record for my career. So right now we have the 3 drills turning. Most of that time they've been on Wenot. So in other words, most of that 30,000 meters of drilling is on Wenot. But we did put the 1 hole in Gilt Creek, and then we'll also talk about the drill hole that's underway that's going to test Gilt Creek and under Wenot, and test that Wenot at depth. So we're really heads down right now towards that next resource estimate. And I think that's going to be kind of exciting. It's going to be exciting for us. That's really what we've been focused on. So we could have done it earlier this year, but basically we wanted to, when you start intersecting some really good mineralization, you're kind of like, no, let's keep going and see how big this is. And so we're doing that. And then after we get that resource, we're going to go to an updated PEA that's going to look very different. So we'll talk about what that's going to look like. Okay, so So, I think we're the Brownfields project. We'll talk about the access and things that are developing on that front. But, just pursuant to our conversation there, we're well funded for what we're doing on the drilling and the resource and the PEA. But we're also trying to advance the permitting as well. Obviously, without the updated PEA, it's a little difficult, but we're doing everything we can to kind of nudge ourselves as far forward as possible. So again, we're probably, there aren't too many large-scale projects that, have paved road access. So as you know, the road was paved to Linden down there for a long time because Linden has a huge open-pit bauxite mine that actually has been in operation since 1916, like over 100 years. So, when people ask, is there an available skilled workforce? Absolutely. There's a lot of small scale gold mining in Guyana by legal small scale registered prospectors, but also big scale mines as well. So, and that road that's going to head down all the way to Brazil ultimately, it's paved probably about 40 kilometers south of Linden already, and it is underway. They're much slower than they initially had expected and we'd hoped, but the reality is, well before year end, we'll have that paved road to the Omai junction, and then it's just 10 kilometers into the property. So this kind of shows you the geology on the left, and you can see those are all those drill holes that we've been putting in. And so, as you can imagine, like a lot of people ask us, are you doing infill drilling? And basically, as you know, infill drilling is sort of, you scope out the size of a deposit at a wide spaced holes, but then when you want to move into, feasibility, you do the infill drilling, which is tighter spacing, so you have that confidence in your inventory, right? For us, we really aren't doing infill drilling. We're doing a bit that would be classified as infill drilling, but mainly what we're doing is just stepping out on these zones because there's a number of these vertical parallel zones. So each time we drill, we go through zone at different depths. And so for us, we believe, as I said, the value for shareholders to me for Omai we see right now is proving how large that Wenot deposit is. Does that sort of make sense, Gorm?
Yeah, I mean, it hasn't been, you haven't really focused that much on extending the strike, it seems, as per our last conversation, but mainly drilling out. It looks like to me, extensions with what would have been a waste within the pit, but it now is proven to be ore more like. So it is effectively, obviously, an extension and very high value because it would have been within the pit shell. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah, that as well. But I guess the other thing we'll talk about is we focus very much. This was a past producing property, so a lot of people say, "Oh, you're just drilling under an old pit." Well, the reality was because this property was in production when the gold price was under $400 and even touched $300, they
Yeah.
were mining very selectively. So we didn't have to go that deep because they didn't go after the parallel zones. Um, so one of the things we focused before the last year's PEA on things above about 300, 330 meters depth. So then people were asking us, well, but does it go deeper? Because when you're looking at a pit this large, and some of the pits that they're looking at that even have feasibility studies elsewhere in Guyana, they're taking their pits down to 500 meters plus. So what we decided is to step down and go below that 330 meters and see, what's down there at 450. And we'll talk about what we hit there. And this is why we focused there. So, and you're correct. We haven't stepped a long way off strike. We've done a few holes there. Yeah, and we also just in a recent hole, we're quite delighted. Often, when we're drilling down there and you're drilling across, to in the zones that you kind of know, we all often do what I call going fishing. If once you've mobilized the drills, the people, and everything in country, sometimes you don't know what's down there. You drill the extra 100, 150 meters just to see, you're in a project that has a property that has a lot of gold. So, you keep it going. So we kept one drill hole going last month, and we actually did identify another zone in an area that we weren't expecting anything. So we're kind of quite excited about that. I don't know if can you see my cursor there?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, so we were drilling some of these holes out on the West Wenot area because, of course, this is the area we think is going to be a starter pit. It's a logical place. The zones come to surface. So we were drilling this hole 116, and we kept it going. And you can see these red zones are the zones that we identified in the last resource. So out in here, you can see there was no known extensions of these zones. And way up here, down in hole 116, we actually hit a 27-meter intercept of 2.4 grams. And I think 9.8 of that, 9.8 meters ran 4.5 grams. Just fantastic. So we actually have a follow-up hole going on that just to figure out, hey, what's that out there? It's a little bit removed from the deposit, but not far, as you can see. But to your point, Gorm, you were saying about the extensions along strike. We're happy to see that because out in this area where we have drilled, we intersect 2 or 3 zones. They're fine, and a lot of people would be excited about those. But obviously, with Wenot, they would, they're probably a satellite pit, but they're not as robust as Wenot. But when we see this zone up here, we have to say, oh, maybe we should be drilling. Maybe it's a little further north out here. So anyway, that's for our later exploration. Right now, we've got to focus on that resource. So this is a complicated slide, but I think it answers and talks about something you asked about, which is, are we kind of filling in the gaps? And so, let's look at the level plan. So if you look at the top right map, that's the bird's eye view looking down from above. And this is only at the 100-meter depth level. So this is pretty shallow. You can see there the extent of the old pit compared with the zones that we've identified, even at 100 meters. So this is our block model that formed our resource. And you're right, there are these gaps that we had in, and remember, this is from February 2024. So this is over a year old and 30,000 meters behind. So some of these gaps were because there was no drill holes. So we've obviously done some of that and some up in here as well. But, people then said, well, let's look down at 300 meters, 350 meters. And again, this is the bird's eye view. And remember, these zones are vertical. So all these zones you see here should be, you should get the same kind of footprint. But what we're saying here, as you can see, our resource was really just along that one horizon because of the way we're drilling. But what we started to find is these really wide intercepts, and some of these are definitely, these are since we spoke last, and I think one of the turnaround sort of moments for us is we drilled this 4.5 grams over 57 meters, and it wasn't right at the contact; it was in this zone to the north. And then when we did some others, we got like 3.16 over 68 meters. These are the widest intercepts I've, they're amazing intercepts. So what we've done, and of course this makes some sense because if you look up shallower, remember gold price was really low and they were selectively mining this narrow little part, and they were selectively mining that zone that was to the north of the contact. So it makes some sense. So in here, we've been trying to step out, narrower step outs, because when you're hitting things like 4.5 grams over 45 meters and things, that you're going to build resources quickly. It's almost like having a mine within your open pit mine. And then I guess the other thing hanging in there is, if there's a whole zone of that, that's even underground grades. That's nice underground grades. So it gives some optionality is how you ultimately develop and optimize the economics of the development of this deposit. So that's in this area. I mean, this has been pretty exciting for us.
Certainly. And Elaine, I mean, just to give a sense, you cannot obviously say because it would be insider information, but what, based on historical returns, sort of adding ounces per meter drilled, what has that looked like historically with reported assay intervals? And then would you expect that to be consistent for the upcoming resource update, or would you expect it to be better than you have seen historically? Put it that way.
Well, up to the last resource, I think we were doing 90,000 ounces of resource per hole. We were drilling a little bit shallower, so that might, per meter might come down a little bit, except it's offset a bit because the grades that we're getting at depths are higher. So really, really difficult to say until we really, right now we've been really drilling and collecting the data, and we have 16 drill holes at the lab that we're waiting for assays as well. So we have a whole bunch of data. So I think at this point, it's still a work in progress.
And when do you expect the cutoff for the updated resource and consequently PEA to be for drilling?
Yeah, great question. We thought it was going to be at the end of May, and we're already into June. I think we're kind of being a little bit greedy on this front. So we're expecting a lot of assays next week. So I think we're probably looking at a week to 2 weeks out. But we've already engaged the independent consultant to do the next to do the 43101 resource, and we're trying to get that done within the next 6 to 8 weeks. That's what we're hoping for. So yeah, cutoff is maybe 1 to 2 weeks out once we get this next big batch of assays.
Right. And if I ask you, I mean, you have some analyst coverage by now. I would expect. I haven't taken a look at exactly whom and who's covering you now, but what are they expecting or guiding on average for the updated resource?
Actually, that's a little bit all over the map. We have sort of 3 analysts with sort of in-depth coverage, all of whom have been to the property and things like that. I'm not really sure I'm allowed to say what they're looking at, but we're at 4.3 million ounces. I mean, in 2023 drilling leading up to our 2024, we drilled about 8,000 meters, and we added 560,000 ounces.
Yeah. So if one, but that was very like industry best sort of meter per ounce generation you could have seen globally, probably something like that. But
yeah,
now you're drilling a bit deeper, so more meters to get the ounces. You expect it to come down somewhat, but still be very, very respectable. So maybe
right.
Half that, or half what you said, 90,000 ounces per hole, and each hole might have been 300-400 meters deep or only, or something like that.
Yeah, something like 400. Yeah.
So that's,
and we're not double that, but yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's going to be substantial, and and I think one of the other things is, as you know, to get that kind of return per drill hole, two things going. The deposit's pretty predictable. We understand it. It's got a lot of zones, but the model and why the mineralization there is quite obvious. So the geological model is very well understood, and that's why we can be fairly effective in our drilling. Also, as you can imagine, this is a 2.5 kilometer deposit, and you step out and you hit it, right? So that allows us to be fairly effective with our drilling.
Okay. And when do you expect the PEA approximately to because you're going to cut off soon, it sounds like. So then it takes how long when you cut off to get it done? Or the resource first, I guess.
Probably 6 weeks.
6 weeks.
Yeah.
And would the PEA be released simultaneously, or would that be a bit more deferred, right? It would take a month or two more, probably.
Yeah, that's going to take longer, and we should talk about how that's going to change, because it's going to be very different from the previous PEA.
Yeah, right. Because I mean, you will change sequencing. You will probably change cutoff grades, I would imagine too, since gold price is quite a lot higher. Or so let's talk about that. Maybe you have a slide, or maybe not. So
okay, yeah, no, that's a good idea, because as I said, the first PEA was really we knew it was early. It was only on 45% of our resource, but it still actually was quite impressive for just a quick initial read on Wenot. But we're going to add in the other deposits, so we'll talk about that.
Yep.
So again, just recapping. Obviously, it's the theme of what we've been doing is really probing into Wenot and saying, how big is this thing? And I don't think we'll be done, but the reality is we know we have a significant expansion with what we've done. We've got to get that out there to the investors, and just so that people understand what we're dealing with here. We probably are going to continue drilling after even with the resource there, on some of these extensions and etc. But yeah, this just gives you an idea, and this is a longitudinal section, so you're looking sideways. You can see how many drill holes we've put into this, and I think there's more since this diagram. I think the takeaway on the right is just to reinforce. A lot of times when people are drilling a gold deposit, they're drilling one zone, and we always have multiple zones, and you can see in like hole 101, there were 3 distinct zones, each one very impressive. 16.3 grams over 10.5 meters. Another zone, separate zone, 2.13 over 48 meters, and another zone, the last one's in the sediments, and would address one of those gaps we talked about, 3.83 over 18 meters. So yeah, this is a very impressive deposit. And then bottom left might kind of be a little bit of an indicator to you, but the bottom left looks at the resources for every 100 meters in that deposit. But that's from February of last year. And even there, you can see before that, we drilled a lot between 200 and 300 meters. And you can see in our 43101 resource from last year, there was almost 1 million ounces between 200 and 300 meters. And even there, it's up to 1.88 grams. The takeaway from this was the fact that the grade does appear to increase with depth. We didn't have as much drilling as we do now, but when you look at the upper section and you look at some of these grades, I think we've proven quite definitively that the grade of the Wenot zones increases with depth. So again, when you see the next updated graph on the bottom left, a lot of this 300, 400 meters is going to be filled in. We've done a lot more drilling, 200, 300 meters, but also there'll be some down to 450, even 500 meters.
And down there, Elena, I would presume that would have to start being underground then. Portal at the bottom of the pit, or do you think you can take the pit down there?
Well, you can, especially when it's a pit. It depends. It's all related to the pit slopes and your dilution.
Yeah.
But this pit's gonna be ultimately 2.5 kilometers long and almost 500. In the PEA it was 900, 800 meters across. So right. The bigger the pit, the deeper you can go. With respect to you have to monitor the strip ratio. But when you talk about the strip ratio, especially at this gold price, remember the strip ratio is like for each one, it's only about 0.25 grams per ton. So, a lot of open pits in Nevada, 0.5, 0.6 grams per ton, even lower. And when you look at the grade of what this pit's going to be, even in the last go, our resource was 1.5 in the indicated, but almost 2 grams in the inferred, which is the deeper. So you can tolerate a fairly high strip ratio from an economic perspective when you're dealing with that kind of grade.
Yep.
So yeah, so this is the other deposit. So, and not to be taken lightly. So this is a complicated slide, but I think, we've looked at it before. This is an intrusion, and we kind of looked at it. It's got a profile. It's like 275 meters across by a maximum of 500 meters north-south. And so again, a lot of people's deposits that look like this in a long section, they'd only be 10 meters deep or 20 meters deep. So this is 275 meters deep. Big wide zones, and we'll talk about what we're doing because there's a drill sitting on that, drilling that as we speak. So basically these are flat lying zones. So it's not like Wenot that they're vertical zones. This one is in an intrusive body. Think of a cylinder, and then it kind of broke sub horizontally. It's got quartz stockworks and things like that. I guess one of the things is relatively shallow compared with a lot. This is only, the top part is only, we say 300 meters, but when we drilled that drill hole before Christmas, the mineralization came up to 230 meters depth. So you're going to have to ramp down into this, but that's not extremely deep. And remember, the old pit is done, so you're not going to go from the bottom of the pit or anything. You're going to go from surface. So you have complete optionality as to when you develop this relative to the big Wenot Open Pit. So like when you're doing mine planning and optimizing economics, flexibility is always a good thing, right? I guess one of the things this is kind of confusing, but when people look at underground mines, one of the things they always talk about is ounces per vertical meter. And why they do that is because a lot of the cost underground mining is doing lateral development. So like a lot of underground mines, especially you imagine if there was just one thin zone, you have to develop, hundreds of meters. This is a very compact deposit that won't require a lot of lateral development, but also the ounces per vertical meter between 300 and 600 meters is almost 4,600 ounces per vertical meter. If you look at a lot of the world's underground deposits, a lot of them, very few exceed like 2,500 ounces per vertical meter. So again, the grade at this, like we used 1.5 cutoff. And to your point, would we look at reducing that cutoff because of this was done at a $1,700 gold price? We don't actually expect, if we lowered the cutoff grade, I don't think it would have a profound impact on it because of the nature of the gold distribution. But it's running 3.3 grams per ton average. That's quite adequate for a deposit that has that many ounces per vertical meter, right? Yep. So it's a good deposit. And the key thing is this was not in our PEA that we did last year, not in our economic study. And so in the one that we're going to do this fall, this is going to be included as well. So that's why I say that this next PEA is going to be very, very different.
And Elaine, again, just to showcase how far this would sit, because one would imagine, and you're drilling a hole now through Gilt Creek into a deep intersect of Wenot, right? Testing a very special hole. You're started at 22nd of May, I believe. You announced that. If you hit when you prove that Wenot is continuing to depth significantly, would you imagine that it would be a joint underground operation between Wenot and Gilt Creek, or what do you think makes sense? That's more of a PFS consideration, maybe. But if you even undertake drilling that deep, if not, but what's your thinking on that? Is that for the acquirer to figure out, or is that something you want to figure out?
Well, I guess in mine development, it's in mine planning, it's all about optimizing economics, and what if so yeah, we're talking about, we're up on Gilt Creek here. I think we're down at about 450 meters right now. So if we hit down here, it's going to be 700-800 meters below the Wenot that we're intersecting here now. These are subvertical zones, so it should continue down. Geology says it will, but things can happen in 800 meters, I can guarantee you. But it's an incremental cost of only about $300,000. If we identify something down here, you're exactly correct. I mean, it really provides some indication that it's probably a 20, 30, 40-year mine life. The timing, to your question, whether you develop it quickly, entirely depends on what kind of grades and what it looks like down there. I've worked on a project previously where we did exactly this. I did exactly this, which was drill about 1,200 meters below a shear hosted deposit, and that now has $1 billion shaft on it, and they have some 100-gram stopes down there. And again, at surface, the mineralization was good, but it was not 100-gram material. So, I guess it's kind of, it's one of those. It's definitely blue sky. We wanted to drill Gilt Creek again anyway. So, the highest risk is that, it's tough drilling 2-kilometer holes. It's a little different too, because we also want to hit Gilt Creek where we want to go through it in a meaningful way to meet our objectives on that deposit. So, I guess, this is a long run. And then also we want to check and see what's between these two, because this is a property that's got a lot of gold mineralization in it. And I would also say some of the historical research that was done on Omai, the age dating, they do all this isotopic data, to get the age of things. The mineralization of the gold, like the gold mineralization in these two deposits, is exactly the same age. So it came from a common source. So I'm also kind of excited about what could be in between. It truly is an exploration hole.
But I mean, if you look at Gilt Creek, it looks like, I mean, I don't know if it has been dribbled. It looks like it's sloping towards the projection of the downward plunge of Wenot. Is that a bit of a stupid, sort of easy interpretation, or is there some merit to
that? We have a lot of questions about Gilt Creek, and I don't know if I have a slide on it, but we drilled through that. We did one hole before Christmas. So we said we wanted to do 2 holes on Gilt Creek. So we did one before Christmas, as we had said, and then this is the second. The hole we did before Christmas, we were supposed to have come out of the intrusion, and it ended up we were still in it, so we kept drilling. So we drilled 200 meters of the intrusion beyond where the historical interpretation was. So
could you indicate where that extended to with your mouse, possibly?
Maybe it's So you can see on this one. So we set up again. Remember, the old drilling was done from the bottom of the pit.
Yeah.
And it's now full of water. So we come out to the side and drill across, which is not ideal, I might say. So we came across, can you see my cursor on the far right?
Yep.
Okay, so we came sort of across here, and so we thought we were going to come out of the intrusion here. We ended up going 200 meters more, and we were still in it. So, that was, and we actually ended the hole in mineralized material with visible gold within, I think, 6 meters of the bottom of the hole. It was just, we had extended it, and Christmas was coming. Well, we were on Christmas, so we decided to shut it down. We probably still have some exploration to do. And the other thing we're probably contemplating is putting a drill hole up on this side and coming across here and trying to come into this area to see, does that actually stop there?
Right. So there is no real drilling there yet. So that's
no. So that's there's still some questions, I guess. One of the good things is, between 300 and 600 meters on this deposit, that's about 1.6 million, about 1.5 million of the resource ounces, and 2/3 are indicated. So it's pretty well drilled up there. But you're right, there's a lot of open potential. The deepest intercept down here was at 960 meters, so down further. But there was only a couple drill holes down there. They hit mineralization, but there's not enough drilling to get that into the resource. So, so just geology says that the mineralization should continue at depth. The cutoff is going to really be economic extraction.
Exactly, but the point being the distance between the downward projection of Wenot and Gilt Creek looks like it's probably like 600 meters lateral or 700 meters lateral or something like that. It might even be less if you extend these things, if it
Yeah, from
plunges
side to
north.
side, maybe 400, 500 meters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's like it would be very likely one underground scenario. I mean, I would imagine even if you're acquired by a big company, they build the open pit, they start mining that. They might mine it aggressively. Meanwhile, they drill out and confirm, the extent of this underground thing, and then they develop one big underground with maybe 4 or 5 million ounces if they can sort of pull this out. Uh,
Right. Yeah. In all scenarios, no matter who's developing it, yeah,
yeah.
like the open pit is the obvious. And in fact, the
Yeah.
West Wenot is pretty sweet because we actually, this whole 109 was to test the mineralization at surface, and it's there. Same with 116. So um, the thing is, the likely scenario is you would start the underground development, a year, 2 years into it, and you would start your ramp down. You would do a lot of your exploration below. But if you're developing here, you can do a straight shot across to
Yeah.
develop here. And that's only 400 or 500 meters. A lot of mines they have to develop 500 meters across between even zones sometimes. So the advantage is if you only had Wenot, then you'd probably have to wait till you mine down a ways and then ramp down from the bottom of the pit. The fact that you've got Gilt Creek there and we're running the economics on that for sure, again, gives you a lot of flexibility. Just if there's something spectacular and Wenot continues to increase in grade with depth, and it just opens up possibilities for, we believe that Wenot, like that Omai should be, a large scale mine again, and when you're developing large scale mines, especially in a country like most, the development of a country like in a country like Guyana, it's a profound impact on the country and the communities, and so you want to have a multi-decade project. You don't want to just be, historically it produced for 10 years, and then all those people, I mean, they loved their jobs. It was very lucrative. It was a great mine. It had really high safety standards. But then they were gone, and all those people never had a job that good again in their lives, right? So, if it's a benefit to the country and stability for large companies to have a 20 or 30-year mine life. So that's kind of the idea of that deep Wenot target. Like it goes back to what I said. Our theme really this in 2025 has been, how big is it?
Yeah. So the what other? I mean, you're increasing the resource is going to happen in the updated PEA. What other are there? And you're going to include Gilt Creek, so it's going to be
Yeah.
the NAV is going to explode. Obviously, I mean that's to be expected. Gold price is a lot higher, so the base case gold price is going to be increased as well. Is there any impact in changing the cutoff gold price in the pit at Wenot itself? Or have you more or less just capsulated all of the gold in these vein sets, or is there any capture doing that? You think?
Um, there, yeah, there are definitely deposits. I've worked on deposits that are extremely sensitive to the cutoff grade.
Yeah.
We did studies when we did the original Wenot, and you can more than double the cutoff grade, and you don't impact you can. So if you increase usually for us as in the mining business, we're more concerned about, is the project going to still thrive and be economic if the gold price falls.
Yeah, exactly.
And so for us, we usually say, okay, if we raise the cutoff, does this still work? So for us, you can double the cutoff grade for Wenot, and you only lose about 10% of the ounces, which is incredible.
Yeah.
So similarly, though, if you drop the cutoff, you might add some, but the gold mineralization, it's kind of it's there or it's not there. So it's, in other words, there's not super low grade, large amounts of super low grade. There is some for sure. And we'll obviously explore that in this next PEA, because with the gold price where it is, chances are we'll run some scenarios where we use a lower gold price or a lower cutoff.
Is there any other variable? I mean, you're adding Gilt Creek, so you'll add a sequence scenario, I presume, it's sort of outlined in the PEI. Is there anything else? The scale of the mill would probably increase, I would expect, or would you just increase the mine life, or how do you describe it? Not that it really matters. I mean, but yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is just our targeting. So it's not 43-101 compliant, but it's just the general concept. So what you have in the left column there, that is our baseline PEA we did on the Wenot small pit. So it was a 9,000 ton per day plant. And so that was 13-year mine life. It produced 1.84 million ounces. And basically it gave you a net present value of 560 million US. And that's at the 1950 gold price. So what we're going to do, just simplistically expand that pit, add the Gilt Creek. So we see an expanded Wenot, we would probably take that mill up to like 11,000, 12,000 tons per day. Underground doesn't produce the same tonnage for sure. It's more smaller scale mining, obviously underground. So maybe 2,500, 3,000 tons per day. But remember, the grade's much higher. So that would be looking at probably a 14, 15,000 ton per day plant. And that would take us to 15 or 20-year mine life. And again, these targets have been sort of the targets since we started the project, because it averaged 300,000 ounces per year production historically. And so with the two deposits, again, we believe that it's got the potential to go there. So that's our goal. That's our target. And to your point, because we're including the underground, the PEA is going to take a little while. So once we get that resource, we're probably still another 3 to 4 months out from publishing the updated PEA.
Right. And metallurgy will be mainly unchanged. I mean, you have that information on Gilt Creek, obviously, it's sort of M&I already mostly. So there's no real change there, you think, or is there any movement expected?
No, but we're actually in the process of doing that currently, because we did the one Gilt Creek hole and we identified some intervals for composites for metallurgical test work. And with this next hole, we're going to wait for the assays and then we'll select some composites. So we'll do some metallurgical work for the Gilt Creek for sure, because in an intrusive, obviously intrusives come from deep within the earth, so they can change a little bit with depth, and so we just want to make sure we obviously have tons of information on the metallurgical recoveries and everything from the upper part. The lower part will do that just because it's a good thing to do and just check it out. And then at Wenot, historically, I think we've talked about this, but when they mined it, they really didn't believe that there was a lot of mineralization in the sediments. And so they mostly mined the volcanic. So we want to also take some of the samples from the sediments, and we're also just selecting those as well. When we're doing the met work, we want to make sure that they're representative and things. So those are the areas where we would focus on doing the met work.
Yeah, and then cutoff is soon for the resource and PEA, but for the rest of the year, can you just highlight where you're expecting to drill? I mean, if you hit deep, you might follow up and do more deep holes. You have the new Wenot zone. You're going to follow up on that as well. There to the west, you showcased earlier. Or are you going to target some of these cigar shapes, blueberry and snake, and what's just outline the full scope you're planning to do?
Yeah, and I mean, obviously we've had some focus on that. Yeah. So these high grade zone, there's a series of them. This one was the one that Anaconda was on in the late 1940s. And these ones we can trench and they look lovely. We've thought about reverse circulation drilling, but it's not that much cheaper, and it's you don't end up with cores. So I think what we'll do is we'll deploy one of the 3 drills when we're done this Gilt Creek hole, and we'll do a series of actual vertical holes on there to get the orientations. We see beautiful mineralization at surface in the trenches. We're just, I think these high grade zones are important because they're near surface. They're going to be near where your mill is, and they're going to be probably 2 to 3 times the grade of Wenot at least. So yeah, we're going to move the one drill onto those next. And then obviously we are going to keep a drill going on Wenot because we still see a lot of expansion potential. And to your point, to the east and the west, we've just we're mobilizing a drone mag survey. So there is we have the magnetic surveying from before, and it does show us some things, but not to get too complicated. Our flight lines were north-south on the old survey, which makes perfect sense when you look at Wenot. but we do know that there are some subtle structures across here that go north northeast. And within Wenot, we are seeing enriched mineralization along, like beside those structures. So what we want to do is fly the drone survey sort of northwest southeast, and that might help us delineate the zones out in the extension areas rather than just poking drill holes. I think that might be quite helpful. And then also, as you can imagine, that flight line
Yeah.
is going to be perfect for looking at all these zones. And we also know they're on the east side as well. We can go out here and pick up. We can see gold mineralization in some quartz zones. So we're going to do that mag survey, the drone mag, and that'll probably guide us on some step out exploration.
So more of a zoomed out question. So the updated PEA will be out, and then when you're looking at the next milestone, I guess the PFS then. So what do you think makes sense to focus on before the PFS? You can pursue the sort of the payback thing. You can get one or two of these cigars, maybe 300,000-400,000 ounces if you're lucky. That gives you a year of super high grade or 2 years of very high grade stuff in the mill. You enhance payback a lot. You could allocate a bunch of drilling to extend the resource further a bit to depth, or there's many options. What do you think makes sense, and how much do you think is realistic to undertake? You also need to convert, I guess, Wenot to
Right.
M&I to some
That's
extent too.
correct.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
I think after the PEA, it's kind of a blast forward to a feasibility study.
yeah,
Um, we already have a 2-year interim environmental permit that was granted, but we are just looking at going into the EIA process.
yes,
So again, all of these things to advance the project. Now, permitting in Guyana, the timelines aren't going to be anything like Canada or the US.
no,
Um, but the EPA in Guyana is very, and the government, they're very familiar with Omai. They know it's a brownfield site. Um, so we've had a lot of meetings with them and with the potential consultants on working on that. Um, we probably need the full mine plan before we can actually go full out on that.
hmm.
We're just working on that now. So again, everything towards a feasibility. And you're correct. We need to do the infill drilling, and the more expansion drilling we do, the more infill drilling that we have to
Excellent.
do.
Yeah. So it's sort of especially when everything is so promising, it's a bit of a difficult exercise to say enough is enough, I guess, in terms of when you do all of the
Right.
info.
But I still, I think, the target when I started this 3.5 years ago was to find a 5 million ounce resource and a mine that could support 250 to 300,000 ounces a year. So I mean, I think we're on the brink of that. So, but when you get there, it makes sense to just advance it and look at the gold price environment and everything else. And there's other developments going on in Guyana. It's become a destination
Yeah, yeah.
environment in the Guyana Shield. I think, I always say, when the door is open, like run through it. So I think the next stages are, really to advance this through to a feasibility study.
But sort of broad strokes, Elaine, how many rigs do you think you do? Do you do like 5 or 6 rigs, 3 on infill, 2 on exploration, sort of expansion, or what's in your mind? Uh, Sort of after the PEA, you move to PFS, the PFS phase, leading up to that.
I think that's still to be determined because that sort of the infill drilling wouldn't start until late this year, I would say.
Okay. What
I
would the
mean,
quantum be ballpark for the existing resource or something like this? How much would you have to put in, do you think?
as of the previous resource that we had in the PEA, we would have needed to do about 40,000 meters of drilling for infill drilling.
Right. Okay. And
So,
your advance rate daily on average now is approximately with 1 rig, or maybe monthly is more easy
oh
to.
yeah, so with the
That's-
3 rigs, we do about 5,000 meters a month.
okay. Right.
We were hoping for
So
about 6,000. They started out. It just depends because when we're doing the deeper holes, obviously the bottom part gets a bit slower. So if it's not deep, they can do about 6,000 meters a month with the 3 rigs. If it's deeper, then it's like 4,500, 5,000 meters a month.
So basically, you will probably do 4 rigs if it's, or maybe 4 or 5 rigs on infill. You can get that done in less than a year. So you could have the
Oh,
PFS.
absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely, yeah.
yeah.
So,
Okay.
yeah, so it's yeah, and I mean, I guess as I said, road access, and as road access gets better and better, I think that's it's pretty easy, and also, I mean, our assay labs. There's 2 assay labs, and noted, well-known certified assay labs in Guyana that have been there for a long time, and there aren't too many projects anywhere where you work on where you're kind of a 3.5 hour truck ride to your assay lab. So a lot of stuff here is relatively easy.
Yeah, and it's good when that's built for you by the government, and some other projects in Guyana had to build it themselves, right? So it
Right.
costs a lot of money, like tens of millions of US dollars. So it's a big bonus. And I wanted to I get use a short refresh on the actual permit. I mean, what does the permitting process look like exactly? You do the PFS, and that locks in the mine plan. Then you can expedite the EIA. And how long does that take from PFS submission or PFS completion to being fully permitted, basically?
Uh,
What do you
it's
think?
12 to 14 months to get your EIA.
Yeah. Uh,
So
yeah.
we are sort of in the process, but obviously our mine plan is still a bit dynamic. So we can't actually get into the main part. Until we've solidified our mine plan, we can't really get into that 12 to 14 month window.
Would they allow you to submit a updated PEA or sort of
Yeah,
use
other
that?
other companies have done that for sure. Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Right. So yeah, mid 27
Right.
to H2 27 sounds like you could be fully permitted potentially.
Right. And also remember that's for greenfield sites, and we're fully acknowledged as a brownfield site.
Okay, so but I
So
mean, so if I just ask you directly, when do you think you will be fully permitted? Basically.
yeah, I mean, those are the guidelines, and I have no idea other than that. I mean, I think we just, I guess I take comfort in the fact that the government wants to see the redevelopment of Omai.
Yeah.
I guess the other thing is there's some good projects in country that have advanced ahead of us, and so that's a good thing. So we're not alone down there. There's G Mining's working on Akko. G2 is moving forward quickly. Mako's down there, the Aurora mines in production. So we're not alone, and so I think that also it means that they're not figuring it out, and also it's kind of nice sometimes not to be sort of the first of the large scale projects through that EIA process, right?
Yeah. Okay. Wrap on the final question. This
Yeah.
time next year, what does Omai look like then?
Oh well, I think a pretty big resource, and the PEA underway, the PEA done, the EIA and the permitting going forward, and the infill drilling going on. I think also, we can't not drill Gilt Creek a little bit to see what it looks like at depth. Maybe it's just there's a few in the management team like myself that we're still explorationists at heart, and you sit there and you look and you go, huh, got it. Well, it's the same thing with the Wenot Deep. I've drilled shear hosted deposits at depth before, and that's why, that's always been calling to me. But also we got to go down at Gilt Creek here. I think if we turn around and we drill from this direction, we can test a bit at depth. It is unfortunate we can't drill from the bottom of the pit, and it's not worth dewatering this pit. But we're just not drilling it ideally, but really want to explore some of these things. So, and then of course, if we hit Wenot down here, I'm not saying it's practical to do extensive drilling down there, but we might get a directional drill in there to do some, depending on what we see, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, so it's really advanced things. We have lots to advance through to a production scenario, and I think that makes sense. But at the same time, we'll probably continue to, as you say, go after the high grade. The high grade zones are kind of an easy thing. It's just they're going to be satellite deposits anyway, so it didn't make sense to take our eye off of Wenot in the short term.
Yeah. But we can expect a fairly substantial raise probably towards the end of this year, since you're embarking on a big infill drilling campaign at that point. You wouldn't necessarily need to, I guess, immediately, but since you would have 16 million US approximately at the end of year. But yeah, somewhere around there, I would
Yeah.
imagine.
Yeah. So I mean, the big issue is the resource that's kind of 6-8 weeks out there.
Yeah, 6-8 weeks for resource, then PEA 3-4 months.
Yep.
And that's what we have to look forward to. So, Elaine, Godspeed. Thank you for your time, and we'll see you in probably after the updated PEA, I think.
Okay. Well, I hope our stock performs the same as well as it did since our last conversation.
That will be spectacular. I'll pray for it.
Okay.
Take
Take
care.
care. Thanks.
Bye bye.
Yeah. Bye bye.